Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com. This week I have two topics and three guests. Later in the show we'll be finding out about the travel state of mind after Eurostar conducted research into it, and I'll be speaking to two of their experts, Honey Langcaster-James and Chloe Guinn, and they'll be talking about the travel state of mind as well as their own particular areas of expertise. That's coming up later. But first, we're finding out about the Aviation Environment Federation. As I mentioned last week, I'm looking into the pollution around airports. So if you live near an airport and you're suffering from problems with pollution, please do contact me. Facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. But while doing my own research, I came across the Aviation Environment Federation, who are looking into this kind of thing since the early 70s. And my first guest is Cait Hewitt, and she's going to be talking about the Aviation Environment Federation, or AEF. So, of course, the first question, as always, is who are you and what do you do?
We formed in the 1970s to represent communities around airports who in those days were concerned pretty much exclusively about aviation noise impact. There were people who might not have that might have lived next to what had started out as a kind of grass strip type thing for aircraft to set off from, and were now affected by this kind of mass growth in tourism, and who wanted a kind of policy level solutions from government, people who felt they had common problems, and wanted some government action on those. And so we still have that kind of membership body, but over the years we've expanded the issues that we work on. We do a lot of work now on the climate change impacts of aviation, but also looking at air pollution around airports, and particularly around Heathrow.
So how are you funded to do all this work?
Partly by our membership, who will be individuals or, as I say, community groups who are directly affected, but much more significantly by charitable trusts. So we're a not-for-profit organisation. We don't receive any money from the industry or from government.
I must admit, I've been in travel nearly 13 years as a travel agent, travel researcher, and now a journalist, and I hadn't come across you before. Who's your target audience? Well,
so we work very much kind of, I suppose, behind the scenes. As I say, we're very kind of policy focused. So we talk a lot to government, to civil servants, insofar as the UK government will say, well, look, some of these problems go bigger than the national level. We've become involved in some of the UN level talks and negotiations, particularly about kind of policies on aviation CO2 emissions. We talk also, I suppose, to MPs and other decision makers. Where appropriate, we've kind of had input to European discussions and policies, and we do a lot of just kind of analysis and putting out information to some of the kind of bigger NGOs who pick up the issues every so often. So kind of Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth, organisations like that, will often kind of turn to us for some of the more detailed information about these impacts.
Is that why your website's quite highbrow? I mean, if you was an animal campaign group, there'd be loads of videos about different aspects of animal welfare. But there's nothing on this. There's lots and lots of information, which, to be perfectly honest, isn't aimed at a Sun or a Mirror reader. Not that I'm trying to tar all Sun and Mirror readers with the same brush.
No, it's true. And I mean, that's an issue we kind of talk about and think about every so often. Are there things that we need to do to make some of this information more accessible? At the same time, I suppose what we feel one of our strengths is to make sure that everything we say is, very much backed up by the right evidence. We're not just making, emotive arguments about noise that are easy to be shot down as, this is just one NIMBY organisation who doesn't want the problem. We try to approach things from a kind of more neutral, fact-based way, I suppose, and to think about, what are the long-term solutions as well as what are the immediate impacts.
So you're not like the groupers at Heathrow as we're recording this who are causing massive disruption in one of the tunnels by holding protests. You're there about getting the facts out in a calm, rational way and not about causing inconvenience to members of the public trying to go on holiday or trying to get to work.
Yeah, no, we are. I mean, I think the reality is that the solutions to some of these problems are difficult to implement. And, I think those kind of people who break in and sit on runways will sometimes, cause a lot of annoyance and inconvenience, but might at least get an issue kind of aired by the media, at least get people talking and thinking about these things. Why are they doing that? What's going on here? Certainly we don't do that stuff, but equally I think it would be difficult. We could carry on for years putting out information, and as you say, people would come to our website and think, "Oh no, this is way beyond me." There's a role, I guess, for making sure that ordinary people in the general public can have a better understanding of these impacts and issues, because it's only really when people start to care about stuff and start to ask for change that the politicians will respond to that and will start to put in place some of the measures that could actually solve these problems.
Isn't that going to be difficult though? I mean, I speak to lots of people, being an ex-travel agent. I spoke to somebody at Luton Airport who said that £40 Luton to Warsaw return was too expensive. So if you're coming across with all these points that need to be doing to protect the environment, and it's even if it puts up a price of a flight £15, a lot of people are going to be resistant to the idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to be a vote winner either, is it?
No,
no politician's going to want to come in on a ticket of, increasing aviation taxes in order to try and solve some of these environmental problems. So yes, it is going to be difficult. At the same time, it's a bit of a blip in terms of the history of our civilization, that we've got used to this idea of very cheap air travel. We as an organisation certainly wouldn't argue that, we want as a point of principle to make air travel more expensive and to make it, more difficult for people to travel abroad. But equally, I think some of these arguments about how, it would be quite wrong to ever do anything that would put up the cost of flying. Some of those are founded on the idea that, there's been this massive democratization in terms of who can travel, that people on, low and middle incomes are doing lots of flying in the way they might not have done in the past. And it's a little bit of a myth that the pattern of who flies still, it tracks very closely what people's personal income is. So actually, a large majority of the flights taken today are taken by people on high incomes who are taking, not just one family holiday a year, but lots and lots of short breaks, popping off for the weekend skiing and this kind of thing. So, we do make an argument that politicians might have to be brave on some of these issues and might have to face the fact that, cheap flying and managing impact on the environment are probably not going to go hand in hand always in the future.
You're listening to The Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com. I neglected to say at the introduction to the show that there's also some very important news from the Civil Aviation Authority. So if you're a passenger who's having problems claiming compensation from your airline, in the news section we'll be finding out how the CAA are tackling the lack of response to rules and laws by 5 airlines, so you can find out who they are later on. At the moment we're finding out about the Aviation Environment Federation. We found out who they are and how they're funded, and now I want to find out what kind of problems they have, and does the aviation industry cause global warming? Are they one of the contributors to the problem? And that's what Cait's going to be talking to us about now.
So, as I say, I mean, the one that I suppose people are most aware of, and certainly that it will be most on politicians' minds, remains noise. And it's a persistent problem over time. There have been significant technological advances in aircraft since the first jets, which mean that, you're not getting the very, very noisy. We haven't had anything like Concorde, for many years. So individually, aircraft are less noisy than they once were. And that's, as a result of good, research and development in aerospace technologies. Nevertheless, there's a lot more of them. And there's also evidence that people are becoming increasingly either sensitive to or for some reason increasingly affected by aircraft noise, both in terms of annoyance levels, but also actual kind of physical health responses. So aircraft noise at night, now there's increasing evidence to suggest that can increase risks of things like heart attacks and hypertension, partly as a result of just causing awakenings. But, there are actual there's objective evidence, I suppose, is the point, to say that aircraft noise can be damaging, even to people who don't think they're affected or annoyed by it. So noise remains a significant issue. As I say, we also do quite a lot of work on the climate change impacts of aviation, which are significant. I mean, it's basically the most damaging form of transport per kilometre, I suppose, in terms of CO2 emissions. We're not going to see any electric aircraft in the near future. This is an industry that's almost completely dependent on fossil fuels and will remain so. So that's likely to be a significant challenge as we try to move, our economies to much lower carbon forms of energy. That's a particular challenge for aviation. As I say, we've got this this challenge, particularly in London and particularly in relation to Heathrow, about air pollution. And that's something that has relevance to the question of airport expansion, because you get pollution partly from aircraft, but also, of course, significantly from road vehicles. So actually the cars and vans that are going to and from Heathrow are at least as much a part of the problem as the aircraft themselves. Obviously